Today is October 10th, 10-10-10, and we are in our country's premier national park, Yellowstone. It's a beautiful autumn day, although it's not so sunny and cloudy and cool, but it's a great view of this geyser field. It's as if the ground were on fire up ahead of us here. We're headed to Old Faithful. I'm going to walk around some of the geysers and try to learn something about the freshwater aspects of this park. How important are they? How important is freshwater here in Yellowstone? We've seen elk and deer, but no bison yet. Off in the distance, some more smoke rising. This is such an amazing place to come to any time of year. So it's October 10th, 10-10-10, and we are at Old Faithful here in Yellowstone National Park. We're watching the steam come up. It's not expected to erupt for another hour, I guess, but we are visiting with Darlene Boss, who is an interpretive ranger here at the park, and she's agreed to talk to us a little bit about the water cycles here in the park and their importance and their different cycles. And then you were going to start by talking about the surface water.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about our watersheds here in terms of surface water, rivers. Behind me, behind Old Faithful, is actually a very important river called the Firehole River. Mm-hmm. And one of the important things about the Firehole River is that it's going to meet up with the Gibbon River at Madison Junction here in Yellowstone. And that is going to form the Madison River. Okay. Why is the Madison River so important? Well, the Madison's going to meet up with the Jefferson and the Gallatin Rivers in Three Forks, Montana, and they're going to become the Missouri River. So all this water is actually flowing up to the Missouri, eventually into the Mississippi, and all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico. So this is a huge part of that eastern continental divide, and it comes right through this basin. It goes through a lot of other basins too, the Midway Geyser Basin, the Lower Geyser Basin, and so the Firehole River has a huge amount of water coming from it, coming into it, that's actually coming from thermal features. Now, most of the water still comes from snowmelt, it comes from rain, it comes from glaciers, but as it comes and travels towards its meeting place with the Gibbon, it's going to get more and more thermal water into it. We have a continental divide that runs right through Yellowstone, and so while I talked about all this water that's headed to the Madison, there's other water on the east side that's really, really important, and it's from the Yellowstone River. And of course, Yellowstone is how Yellowstone National Park got its name, from the river. Now that water, again, comes from the mountains, it comes from snowmelt, it comes from glaciers, and it ends up finding its way into this dip in the middle of the caldera, Yellowstone's crater from the last volcanic eruption. And this dip forms Yellowstone Lake. So water comes into Yellowstone Lake from all different directions, but every drop of that water, and we're talking about 136 square mile lake, every drop of that water ends up leaving out of the north part of the lake into the Yellowstone River. All that water flows north out of the park. It goes through the Grand Canyon of Yellowstone. It carves another canyon called Black Canyon. And on its way out, it ends up heading into Montana, across the state of Montana, and all the way up to the Missouri in North Dakota. So again, all this water through most of the park is headed up, this fresh water is headed up to the Missouri. Really, really important for agriculture in this part of the world, really important for shipping, really essential water. It also happens to be really important for the Yellowstone cutthroat trout. Yellowstone cutthroat trout are native trout here in Yellowstone, and these watersheds are its native waters. Without the Yellowstone cutthroat trout, without having these places to be that are free from things like lake trout, which is a big problem in Yellowstone Lake, it's not going to survive. Yellowstone cutthroat trout feeds up to 40 different species here in Yellowstone, including the bears and the people.
So, we saw a lot of people fishing today on the rivers.
Yes.
And is it all catch and release?
It is for the Yellowstone cutthroat trout, the Arctic grayling, and the mountain whitefish, which are our native fish here. Those three fish are all catch and release. least, you can keep some of the non-natives that live here. We have some rainbow trouts, some brook trouts, and we also have some brown trouts. Those are non-native fish. And then we have the lake trout, which in the Great Lakes is a native species and is a species that we want. But here in Yellowstone, it's a predator and it eats the Yellowstone cutthroat trout. And so we're trying to eliminate it from Yellowstone Lake.
Oh, how did it get here?
We don't know. We're not entirely sure how it ended up in Yellowstone Lake. It's kind of a bit of a mystery. We know that it occurred sometime after 1988.
Oh, really?
So we're
that
still
recently.
Yeah, that recently. So we're still trying to figure that out.
There may be a human element.
There's probably a human element. Yes, exactly. Now the other side of the Continental Divide, which we have here in Yellowstone, runs right through Craig Pass, has the Snake River. And the Snake River is really, really important too. And the Snake River actually flows south through the Grand Tetons and eventually meets up with the Columbia and into the Pacific.
Okay.
So we have watersheds here in Yellowstone that end up, beginnings of watersheds that end up going to both oceans, essentially.
It's amazing.
Really important stuff.
Yeah. And now, the past few years, do you know whether the snow melt, the amount of water coming into the park, has that remained the same? Has it less?
We have seen fluctuations in the lake that are pretty regular over the last couple of years. The lake got really high actually this spring, but it happened early this spring. So what happened was we had an early set of rains. It was warmer in the spring, and so our lake got high earlier than we expected it to. And then it went back down. So the fluctuation was normal, but the timing was a little bit different than we'd seen in the past couple of years. In fact, the spring rains were kind of similar to the way that they were in 1988, which was pretty interesting. We did not obviously have that fire season, but we had that early snowmelt in 1988, which provided for a later drought. This year we've had quite a bit of rain through the summer. So it's fluctuating. At long-term patterns I can't speak to.
And last winter, I don't think you had quite as much snow.
We did not.
Because we were here in February, was it? Or March? Like the week before the park closed for the season, and there wasn't that much snow here.
No, we did not have nearly as much snow. Grant Village, which is a developed area that gets some of the most snow, can have up to 10 feet, and there was only about 6 last winter.
So that was it was a good thing, I guess, if you got rain in the spring to maybe make up for the lack in the snow.
It was,
base.
but it did then provide an early melt too. So it's a mixed bag.
Yeah. Okay, well, thanks so much for sharing this information about the surface water. We're going to talk in a little bit about the aquifer.